Hello there. Gammy-eyed conjunctivitis Bradley Hall here. So one of my favourite phenomenons in music is when obscenely good guitarists get hired for huge basic bands. Whether it's for the fat paycheck, the huge exposure, or simply just their undying love of butt rock. I think a lot of people assume that very good guitarists would only want to join very technical, complicated bands. But that's far from the truth. Regardless of ability, many musicians find it a lot more fulfilling and logical to use their talent to reach a much wider audience, rather than playing in some tech or prog band which has a much lower ceiling for success. For me personally, I'd have a much better time playing in a band like Nickelback, for example, rather than, say, Archspire. So today, we're going to be looking at the 12 best examples of guitarists who were or are extremely overqualified for the bands they played in. Like hiring Gordon Ramsay to make you a plain cheese sandwich, if you will. What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
There's going to be a lot more of these shit analogies, so you have been warned. Let's do this! For those of you who have been around the YouTube guitar space for quite some time, you'll no doubt remember bald British shredder chap Andy James. He was all over YouTube in the 2010s and like early 2020s, with his playthroughs of his original songs getting shitloads of views, and if I remember rightly, he used to do a load of lick library lesson stuff, I think. Andy is a through and through virtuoso with impeccable technique, killer songwriting chops, and a great ear for melody. So obviously he'd require a band where his 300 IQ skill set would be used appropriately. That's right, patriotic American butt rockers, five-finger death punch. Even though his inclusion in this band does feel a little bit like hiring a team of surgeons to treat a paper cut, I gotta admit, he's actually a pretty sick fit for this band. Even though he's obviously not used to his full potential, his anthemic style of soloing does lend itself pretty well to the band's huge stadium-filled bangers.
I've given up on society, up on my family, up on your social disease. I've given up.
The certified kings of butt rock, Creed have always been known for their unashamedly cringe millennial anthems and Scott Stapp's trademark yarling. Besides the guitar nerds out there, I can guarantee that the majority of Creed's audience are blissfully unaware of the guitar prowess of Mark Tremonti. While not as obviously flashy as many of the guys on this list, Mark is a super solid all-round guitarist with some killer chops and just great musicianship. It may not be super obvious in Creed's music, but his guitar prowess is on display all over the place if you really pay attention to how expertly crafted the riffs and the guitar lines are. Of course, for more apparent examples, you can check out his other legendary band, Alter Bridge, where his guitar playing is a lot more the focus.
Welcome to the...
Jonathan Fivington's very impressive resume, it would be quite easy to dismiss him as some typecast goth clown for hire. But that couldn't be further from the truth. John is a very accomplished guitarist whose unique style fuses traditional metal and hard rock shredding with some absolutely ridiculous country chops. Yes, that's right, country! It's pretty impressive in our world to see a guitarist who's not only mastered typical tricks like sweeping and tapping, but can also rip some extremely impressive banjo rolls. The dude is also extremely prolific with over like 10 solo albums, I think, as well as the vast array of releases and credits under some huge industry names. I also think it's really cool of guys like Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie, whose music obviously doesn't have that much in the way of like lead playing, to take a chance on someone like John and give his amazing talent a huge platform.
And I'm a black rainbow, and I'm an ape of God. I got a face that's made for violence upon, and I'm a teen distortion, survived.
Most people just think of Limp Bizkit as dumb millennial nostalgia bait, which I guess is half true, but beyond the silliness, there's actually a surprising amount of thought that goes into their music, and that's all thanks to a certain Wes Borland. However, unlike everybody else on this list, Wes is far from a technical master. He's more of a sound designer, I guess, and he's damn good at it. His toolkit includes unusual tunings and chord voicings, extremely creative riffs, cursive techniques, effects, but not in a gimmicky way like Tom Morello, for example, in more of like a textural color sort of way, I guess. Not to mention his super quirky stage attire, which has arguably come just as integral to the band's iconicness, and even though the Durstinator is undoubtedly the face of the band, I think Limp Bizkit's integrity and lasting appeal is largely down to Wes.
Reject, look into these eyes, then you'll see the size of the flames. Dwelling on the past, it's burning on my brain. Everyone that burns has to learn from the pain. Hey.
Or going on.
Even though he may not exactly be a household name, Ralph was a true underdog virtuoso, having spent some time playing with heavyweights such as Iced Earth and Death. He had an incredibly tasty, unique style that was somewhat neoclassical, but fused various different sounds, which you can hear demonstrated perfectly in his amazing solo album, Shaolin Monks in the Temple of Metal. Even though traditional American death metal is very fast, it's not particularly technical, especially not for guitarists of this caliber. And the sort of lead playing you often get in this type of music is usually just like stock metal licks and like not particularly virtuosic. So when Ralph joined Deicide on their now classic album, The Stench of Redemption in 2006, it seemed like a very weird, like contrasting matchup. But any doubts are quickly laid to rest when you listen to this absolute masterpiece. His solos here are absolutely gorgeous and so well crafted and surprisingly melodic. And I think it's this sort of like unexpected dark melodicism that really actually complements the music and elevated the band to a whole new level of quality that they'd never really had before and haven't had since. Even though they may be highly respected legendary bands, Cannibal Corpse and Exodus are not really known for their lead playing. They're definitely way more about the riffs and the neck girth than the widdly, which is why it was quite surprising when amazing modern day virtuoso Brandon Ellis was picked up as a temporary replacement for both of these bands. Brandon has deservedly developed a reputation as one of the most monstrous players on the scene today, with truly frightening technique and a very cool, like, 80s swagger that's quite hard to come by these days. His solos with his previous band, the Black Dahlia Murder, are honestly some of the best examples of lead playing in the modern era. I just fucking love his style so much. Yes, Nuno Bettencourt is a god and one of the greatest guitarists of all time. However, I've said it once and I'll say it again, I guarantee if it wasn't for him, that Extreme would just be written off as a fucking joke band. They truly have some of the most horrendous lyrics and song titles I've ever heard. Like, it gives me genuine secondhand embarrassment just to say them out loud. It might have been okay if these lyrics were delivered with the bravado and execution of someone like Michael Starr of Steel Panther, for example. Oh, but Gary Cherone, vocals are just so, like, wet and annoying. All they do is just rub salt in the wound. The rhythm section is pretty solid, I guess, but definitely nothing to write home about. For a band that supposedly has like a big funk influence, you'd expect their rhythm section to be a bit more like, say, Infectious Grooves or Alien Ant Farm. So yeah, even though Nuno is a legit god and carries the band super hard, to me, Extreme has always had that vibe of like a cool uncle jamming with his nephews for a laugh. In terms of hilarious sheer contrast between guitarist ability and band music, this has to be the most extreme example. After Slash's departure from Guns N' Roses in 1996, there was a few replacements that had come and gone, including of course the enigmatic Buckethead, who could definitely also be cited as an overqualified member. But by far the most notable example is the legendary mad scientist of guitar, Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Ron is one of the most gifted musicians, let alone guitarists, on the planet, with an immense musical vocabulary. He has perfect pitch, an obscenely good singing voice, he can play fretless guitar, he makes his own custom guitars, and he pioneered the use of a sewing thimble on his finger so that he could access notes beyond the fretboard. So hiring this guy to play fucking Welcome to the Jungle every night is literally like hiring, I don't know, Stephen Hawking to help with your toddler's preschool maths homework.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want. How do we know the names? We are the people that can find.
So this is a bit of a weird one, as Megadeth's whole shtick is to have a veritable abundance of guitar solos in every song, right? So to be overqualified for this band, one would have to possess an absolutely frightening level of technical proficiency, especially when your band's roster of previous guitarists includes such names as Marty Friedman, Chris Poland, Chris Broderick, but a particular legendary Brazilian virtuoso named Kiko Loureiro definitely trumps them all in terms of raw technical ability and earns that esteemed title of overqualified. To be fair, you could probably also say this about the band's current guitarist Teemu Mantisari, but I do think Kiko wins out as he's just a much better, like, overall well-rounded guitarist. Kiko is not only a ridiculously accomplished technical master with some absolutely world-class absurd chops, but is also just incredibly knowledgeable about music and has a very vast data set to draw from. His style fuses elements of not only metal, but also prog, classical, jazz, and even Brazilian music, which creates something truly precious and one of a kind.
Just like the Pied Piper that rats on the streets. We dance like the marionette.
Now, before they became Cinematic AI Core, Falling in Reverse were a violently mid Warped Tour metalcore band who played like a, let's say, sugary mix of MySpace metal and pop punk. As you'd expect, it was extremely annoying stuff, but they did have one saving grace in the form of British sweeplord Jacky Vincent. The juxtaposition of this sugary scene kid music with some of the most obscene shredding chops you'll ever hear in your life is actually kind of hilarious and makes it almost entertaining to listen to. For essential listening, check out the song Born to Lead, which features an absolutely insane trade-off between Jacky and iconic shred virtuoso Rusty Cooley. Prepare to have your pantaloons soiled verily.
It's 9 o'clock on the dot at the spot, and I'm hanging with her friends again. Great taste, beautiful place, and you're fashionably late.
I get the impression that Manowar aren't particularly relevant outside of Germany these days, but I thought this was a fun inclusion nonetheless. Mostly known as that funny, baby oil bearing, bodybuilding OG power metal band, their music is expectedly bombastic and over the top, but surprisingly the solos on their classic material are pretty tame and not what you'd expect for the genre. Their later guitarist Carl Logan, who stopped being in the band on account of being a pedo, did bring some pretty shredalicious solos to the later album, but nothing in comparison to wielding a four-neck guitar and playing it ambidextrously. When I heard about Angelo Batio joining Manowar, my first reaction was, huh? But when you think about it, it was actually a genius move and a match made in heaven. Even though Manowar's music is far below Michael's pay grade and he's obviously very overqualified from a musical perspective, he's absolutely perfectly qualified on literally every other level and obviously loves it.
We alone are fighting for metal that is true. We own the right to live the fight. We're here.
Last but not least, I have to give a mention to Jason Becker's brief stint as David Lee Roth's solo guitarist, which was very unfortunately cut short by Jason's development of ALS, which left him paralysed. At the time, this was one of the most prestigious and sought-after gigs for high-profile guitarists, with none other than Steve Vai previously taking up the mantle. And you know you have monolithic shoes to fill when you have to follow Steve fucking Vai, one of the most giga-brained and legendary guitarist of all time. But for David Lee Roth's third album, A Little Ain't Enough, Jason not only lived up to Mr. Vai, but quite frankly, absolutely mopped the fucking floor with him. Recording some of the most, quite frankly, absurd classic metal guitar playing of all time. I seriously can't convey how seriously impressive this stuff is. Just listen to the song It's Showtime, which is basically Hot for Teacher on crack, and every other drug conceivable. Plus the fact that Jason managed to pull all of this off during the early stages of ALS is quite frankly mind-boggling. There were apparently times during the recording sessions where poor Jason couldn't even hold his pick properly. Truly insane. Honestly, Jason's ability, musicality, and spirit are still unmatched to this day.
This must be just like living in paradise. Just like paradise. And I don't want
Cheers guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to drop your thoughts on my list in the comments down below. Did I miss out any glaring obvious omissions? Do not forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I shall see you again very soon. Cheers!
Alright, mate! Do that! Do that! Then do that! Nice one!